It is time once again. As we get closer and closer to Special Booster 2.5 at the end of the month, it's time to go over another archetype that's making its debut, as What's the Scoop introduces you to Invisimon. As Invisimon will be the topic of today's discussion, as we will be diving into this brand new archetype, showcasing the machine and cyborg archetypes, but in a very interesting way. But as always, before I get into that, I have one little request of you, and that is simply to accelerate the sub count. Go ahead and subscribe to the Army, turn on the notification bells, because it does help out when we go live and throw videos up to you. But as always, if this is your first time or you know the rules, when you get a first look, so do I, as I get to tell you on What's the Scoop about these amazing cards, so you can sit back, relax, plug in, watch if you want, but more importantly, listen in the background if you have to, about these amazing cards, as I will tell you as I get to investigate them and make sure you get all the information you need in one place. But talking about it much longer, we are going to skip right into the cards, as we have a lot of cards coming out here. Now, interestingly enough, for Invisimon, it has an entire line of cards designed to go with it. We actually have in total 6 cards directly tied into the archetype, as they are meant to be the evolutions and specific types, but we actually have a supporting archetype of about 4 Digimon. And if you do want to know if these are connected, go ahead and read the Liberator novel, because this is where this character and his deck actually, well, technically he's an AI, but the point is, this is where this character and their deck actually originates from, and is rather important for you to understand that in case you just want to know the information. But besides that, we're going to be diving straight into the archetype, as we have a brand new egg, but technically not a brand new Digimon, as Cappurimon returns as the egg for this archetype, starting off as this is actually a Liberator as well card, finally, being a lesser as well, but more importantly has the inheritable that during your turn, when this Digimon checks face-up security cards, it gains jamming for the turn. Very cool. Moving into our first level 3, Espimon is here and has received a full line of support. Starting off, it can specifically digivolve from Cappurimon as the egg for a cost of 0. And then during your turn, when this Digimon would digivolve into a Digimon card with the cyborg or machine trait by reducing the Digi-evolution cost by 1. You can do that. Very cool. For its inheritable all turns, this Digimon gets 1000 DP. This card is also a cyborg, but more importantly, it is now a Liberator traded card. Cool to see Espimon finally returning from Ghost Game. Moving into Hover Espimon, which I was really hoping that this was going to be the level 4. The main key thing here is that this is going to be able to digivolve on top of any level 3 with a cyborg or machine trait for a cost of 2. And then when digivolving, you flip down your opponent's top face down security card face up, sorry, little word tongue there, and then at the end of the attack, once per turn, you get to draw 1 card. Very cool for this card. Additionally, during all turns for its inheritable, this Digimon gets 1000 DP. It is a cyborg, but more importantly, it is also a Liberator. Talking about a brand new Digimon that was released for this set, we have Oblivimon. Oblivimon is the level 5 for this line. Starting off, it can digivolve on top of any level 4 with cyborg or the machine trait for a cost of 3, and it has a security effect, which is really unique, that at the end of the opponent's turn, you get to play this card without paying the cost. And then for its when digivolving effect, you get to flip your opponent's top face down security card face up. During your turn, when your Digimon check face up security cards, you may place this Digimon's top stacked card face up as the bottom security card. Additionally, for its inheritable, your turn, this Digimon's attack target can't change. Very good effect. And this is a cyborg, but more importantly, also a Liberator. So very cool. Finally, talking about the main Digimon of this archetype, the one that inspires this video, we have Invisimon. Invisimon is a dual color level 6, but interestingly enough has, starting off, a security effect, where at the end of the opponent's turn, you get to play this card without paying the cost. Very cool. And then starting off for its effect on play and when digivolving, you get D-Digivolve 2 on one of your opponent's Digimon, and you flip your opponent's top face down security card face up. Then you get to delete one of their Digimon with 1 or fewer Digi-evolution cards. Really, really cool. Then during your turn, when your Digimon check face-up security cards, you may place this Digimon's top stacked card face up as the bottom security card. Very, very cool. As we're about to move into our new tamer here, we actually have the tamer for the Liberator archetype. As for this deck, it is ALTEA. As ALTEA, starting off, is a memory setter where if you obviously have 2 or less, you set to 3. But at the start of your main phase, by placing one play cost 4 or lower black Digimon with the cyborg or machine trait from your hand or trash, as any of your cyborg or machine trait Digimon's bottom Digievolution card, you get to flip your opponent's top face down security card face up. And for its security effect, you get to play this card obviously without paying the cost. And this is also a Liberator card, or very interesting in its traits. Moving into our supplementary Digimon, starting off we have a brand new Solarmon here. This one's very easy, where it's just a normal black rookie, where it has blocker as its main skill and has reboot as its actual inheritable. The key factor for this one is that it is a machine, so this is designed to go with it. And if you want to know how I know that, there is the online Digimon channel that actually do the card battles before the sets come out, so go ahead and check them out. It is all in Japanese, unfortunately, so unless you want to switch it over to English somehow, you'll have to watch in Japanese. But they basically played all these cards together, which means this is probably the supplementary archetype designed to go with it. Talking about the level 4 for this line, we have Blimpmon, where on play when digivolving, one of your opponent's Digimon can't attack players until the end of their turn. Really cool, and has reboot as its skill in terms of the inheritable, so very cool, very solid. Moving into Bulbmon, I think this is actually a very cool Digimon to include. I like the fact that it carries blocker as its main skill, but more importantly, during the opponent's turn, when this Digimon will leave the battle area, you may play one play cost 4 or lower Digimon card from this Digimon's Digievolution cards without paying the cost. Yes, what's cool about this, I did want to mention really quickly, is that this is a solid black Digimon, and I don't think that effect has actually been used in any of the black Digimon ever, I think. So this is really cool to see, because this is usually a effect on certain Digimon, but we usually see it from like blue Digimon specifically, so very cool to see it here. And then for its inheritable, during the opponent's turn, once per turn, when one of your opponent's Digimon attacks, you may change the attack target to this Digimon. Sorry for the strained voice there, still a little sick. Going into the brand new Raidenmon for this archetype. On play and when digivolving, you get to delete one of your opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 7 or less. Cool. And then during all turns, when this Digimon would leave the battle area, you may play one play cost 11 or lower Digimon card with the machine or cyborg trait from this Digimon's Digievolution cards without paying the cost. It also has a Digicrossing requirement to allow you to Digicross it with Raijinmon, Fujinmon, and Suijinmon. You're probably not playing them in this deck, but I did want to mention that for those who are curious. Now, that is all the cards of the archetypes. Now, let's talk about what they can do. So starting off, I really did want to talk about the actual very interesting mechanic introduced with the brand new I guess Espimon line technically, because that's where this archetype really does have these cool effects. Starting off, I think the main thing is talking about Espimon first. Being able to reduce your evolution costs into cyborgs and machines is really cool, because this has been a subtyping that has really only received support in the form of like Machinedramon and stuff like that. So it's really cool to see the cyborg and machine trait really get some love, because there are a lot more than just like Machinedramon stuff. But you know, it's really cool to see that they're finally branching out to talk about more of it, even if they have to create more of them. I think it's cool. Additionally, talking about Hover Espimon, because I think this is kind of where the mechanic of what I was talking about comes into play. So being able to flip up your opponent's security cards and then have them face up and then kind of have that mechanic alive, I think it's really cool. I think the cool thing is it kind of telegraphs to you now as a player, if you're playing this deck, what you're trying to do with the strategy. It just, like, I think this is a really good beginner deck as well, because I think it's very intuitive. It's just really straightforward to what you are trying to do, and then all the other effects, you learn them, so the mechanics are pretty useful. But more importantly for Hover Espimon here, flipping your opponent's top security that was face down, face up. I think they could just word that a bit better. It's just flip the opponent's top security face up. I think the reason they have to talk about that is if you have, for whatever reason, I guess a security card that's face up, in the case of like Royal Base for whatever reason, I guess you'd have to find the top face down security card. So, you know, maybe I want to know how that mechanic works, but point I'm trying to get across here is that Hover Espimon's effect is really cool, because a point is you want to flip up the security cards, because now that you know that they're face up, when you attack into them with your your Digimon, Caprimon will now activate, giving you jamming. So the main factor is you want to use this card to just keep flipping up the security so that you're able to attack into like Digimon and have jamming so that you don't lose in battle. And then for its end of attack, it gives you a draw. So it makes Hover Espimon a very good inclusion in the deck because you obviously want to do that because basically it's going to allow you to get the egg ready to go and then simultaneously give you a draw when you attack. But it has to be when digivolving, so I do think that that's a limitation that's worth it, but it does make the mechanic clear. Now, when we move into specifically Oblivimon and Invisimon, for instance, I think the interesting factor here is that this new security effect for them, where at the end of the opponent's turn you play them out, I think it's really cool because this basically gives you a window into giving you security, but at the same time, it's almost like a redirective. And what I mean by redirective is that it wants you to take aggression and defense into mind, because the effect to have them go into the security, which is the your turn effect, when you check face-up security cards, you place this Digimon's top stack card, meaning that what you're going to do is, say you have a stack of up to something like a level 5. You would then use this effect of the Oblivimon when you're checking the face-up security cards to use its effect to place Oblivimon into the bottom of your security, but it says your top stacked card, meaning that what you're doing is kind of not removal, so you don't lose your stack, you're just removing the top card. So basically think of it like I guess in Dusk and Dawn, you degenerate your Digimon. You do this in other games where they kind of de-digivolve, basically, they go down. But the point is, you're not losing the stack. You're just taking away the top security to put it into the stack. I think the cool thing about that is it can set you up for some very interesting Ace Digimon if you want to play it. I think something like Cyberdramon Ace might fit into this deck really well because you can use it with I think this level with Oblivimon pretty well, where you could just go ahead, use Oblivimon's effect to put into security, leave your Hover Espimon there, let your opponent attack the Hover Espimon, blast Digivolve into Cyberdramon. If you have a Tamer, de-Digivolve, it's a wombo combo. Point is, it's a very good effect, but this effect to put cards into the security face up and then using their security effect to play them, I think is actually very cool, because I think this is also Digimon's way of introducing traps in a way to the game, because this is basically a trap for your opponent. You don't want them to check it, so you put it goes to the bottom, but then your opponent realizes that if they don't clear your stack, you're gonna or clear your security stack, you're gonna just simply play this card out, so it becomes a problem. So I really do like that. The inheritable to have your attack target not being changed, I think it's really cool because this card's a cyborg, so I do think when there's Machine Dramon support, people may want to play this because it will give your Machine Dramon the ability to not have its attack target changed. So do keep that in mind, but it's a good card. Invisimon's really where I think the archetype culminates because of how strong this card is. Because when I look at Invisimon, the main thing I want to focus on is on play and when digivolving for that de-digivolve 2. The reason this is so big is that since these effects work at the end of your opponent's turn, the cool factor is this card plays itself from the security, right? And then it's at the end of your opponent's turn. Say for whatever reason they have an Ace Digimon. What you're going to do here is basically de-digivolve 2, so they'll go overflow, so you'll gain even more memory for your turn. But more importantly, you get the ability to flip up their security, so it sets you up. But more importantly, when you delete one of their Digimon with one or fewer Digievolution cards, if you hit a Floodgate rookie, the cool factor here is that now your Digimon simply play themselves, and that effect is solid. Like, you're just, here you go, boom, to the field. But now if you get rid of a Floodgate rookie, maybe keeping you from gaining memory or something, I think it's a really cool way to remove them with this card, because this also opens the board a bit wider so you can do more damage. I think one of the weaknesses of this card, though, is the fact that its on play would be weaker because you're not going to have jamming from like a Purimon from the stack. But at 11k DP, it's kind of worth maybe swinging into. Like, you're not going to lose much, so it's still a good, like, sizable body. But also, you know, the cool thing is for its your turn effect to place it into the security cards. The cool factor is, like I said before with Oblivimon, it sets you up for Ace Digimon. So if you want to play some level 6 Ace that happens to be black or blue or black specifically, you now have access to do that, as well as the ability to run level 7 aces to go on top of this, because it is a black and blue card. So there are a lot of options to go with. I also think a cool thing is for this card is something like Galaxy, like the Galaxy Loop deck, which I think East made a good video about this, about the engine of it. It usually just runs generic like top ends. I think this is actually a pretty interesting inclusion you could run in that deck, because being able to digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon, I think that's just a solid effect, because when you look at this card, it does a ton of work when you really start to look at its effects. It digivolves 2, it flips up your opponent's top security that's face down, and then it deletes a Digimon with 1 or fewer sources. So, like I said, the key factor here is that this card will allow you to do a lot of setup for the actual deck, but simultaneously for many other strategies, or just this strategy alone, it just does a lot of stuff. So that's kind of the key thing I want to get across here, that this is a card that really puts in the work. Now, talking about ALTEA, really quick, before I talk about the supplementary deck, talk about the supplementary cards here. ALTEA, I think, is really cool because it's a tamer that is specifically designed to focus on getting your archetype online. You place in that level, the play cost 4 or lower black Digimon card. That's really cool, actually, and the reason why is there's a lot of good inheritables on a lot of machine and or cyborg level 4 and lowers, or play cost 4 or lowers, so you could actually tinker with like blocker and stuff like that, so it's really cool. But more importantly than that, I want to talk about the fact that when you do that, and you get that top security face up, I like this is that if you hard play this in the start of your game with like the Espimon in the back, when you push out your Espimon, you can then go ahead, get your member to 3, trigger this effect to go ahead and slot something underneath the Espimon, and then digivolve the Espimon into like hover Espimon or something like that. The reason I'm talking about in that sequence is that you can start to build your stack a lot quicker and more efficient, so it allows you to do more damage. And this card also then sets up your jamming. So now if you don't have something like hover Espimon and you use ALTEA's effect to flip up the face up security, that as long as you have Kapurimon in the sources or anything with jamming, you now will have access to it. But also, the cool thing about ALTEA and a lot of the security effects I didn't mention, when you flip them up, the cool factor is now you're knowing what's there. So if it's an option or a tamer, you can decide whether you want to build up your field first before you go into all-out attacks, maybe, so your opponent doesn't get advantage with those cards. Or better yet, you realize, my opponent has, blank in the security. Let me think, do I want to give that to them by attacking it, or do I leave it there? There's a lot of different mind games you can do with this archetype. Talking about the supplementary cards, I think it's really cool for Solarmon to give you reboot, and also Blimpmon to give you reboot. I think Blimpmon is a really interesting card to play, actually, because it technically stuns a opponent's Digimon from attacking you. So, there is an option, I think, to play that as well. Bulbamon is an interesting card to play, I think, because it's not bad. I think the only problem with Bulbamon is you don't really want to digivolve into this thing without having the rest of the archetype set up, because I think what's wrong with this card is that if, besides having blocker, it really won't do anything unless you digivolve on top of it. So that's where this card has its biggest weakness, is that although I really like the opponent's turn effect for when this card would leave the battle area, you get to play out that level, that play costs 4, one play costs 4 or lower Digimon. I think that's a cool effect, but like I said, it's just that it basically makes us reactive, and we want a progressive card in this archetype, not reactive, so that's the problem with Bulbamon. I think Raidenmon is cool because I think if you just want to play the cards from this set together, you could pretty much just slap in a few more cards and this deck is ready to play. Now, talking about the eventual moving forward for the strategy really quickly, I think that this is a sleeper deck for sure. I think what makes this deck so interesting is that it's still very malleable, so there's a lot of different working pieces and parts that you really need to figure out, no pun intended because they're machines, but the point is there's a lot of little technical things you're going to want to figure out with the strategy in order to properly get it to where you want it to. I do think that this strategy is very good. I think this strategy is very solid, but I do think that this is where the strategy might lack a bit, because it does need some more support to really kind of generate what it wants to do. But ultimately, this is a very good archetype, I think. And I probably will be making videos on this archetype as well, because I think it's a very good beginner deck, and I'll explain why in another video. Point is, this is a very good strategy, and I hope I've informed you enough to understand that this is actually an archetype worth playing, and hopefully you will enjoy. But that's all I've got for you guys today, and as always, this has been Brad from the Ad Army signing off, and for all of you out there, to sign on.